Welcome to the show, everybody. Welcome back. Today we have a guest on that I have great respect for. He is someone that has consulted members of my family and who I've been following and listening to and chatting back and forth with, trading information with for years now. I respect his intellect, his insight, his dedication and passion to natural health care. His story of how he became a natural health care practitioner is similar to mine. We were going in one direction, and then, in the effort to tackle our own health problems and not seeing the results from the standard medical approach, we went off and had to figure it out kind of ourselves with the help of other natural health practitioners, and became so passionate about it that we got really excited, and it became, kind of our life and our life's work. So this is Mike Giamuso, and he is a holistic health practitioner, and he's going to talk more about what that means. He started out as an engineer, which is what I did, and then soon really became more interested. So, Mike, welcome to the show. I thank you for coming on and sharing your wisdom with us today.
Thanks, Dr. Christopher. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm glad you asked me on the show. I'd be happy to share what I know about my experience and what I went through. And yes, I'm a holistic health practitioner. I've been doing it for about over 20 years now, helping clients with various health challenges. So it's essentially personalizing health programs, nutritional health programs, to help people with various challenges that they have. So I started out, as you mentioned, as an engineer, and I got into everything from business consulting but at one point I started getting affected with my own health and had to address my own health. And that's where I had my kind of revelation of, wow, there's more than what I've been told by the medical doctors. And when I dug into it and did some of my research, it was pretty astounding of what's out there and what can really help, that are simple remedies, that we're not aware of. And that kind of led me down that path. It was actually when I first met a coworker at one of the companies I was working for. She was challenged with her husband, and he had like a liver disorder, was in real bad shape. And that was real early on, where I just learned some of the preliminaries about natural health. And in sharing what I knew and what I researched for her, because I felt bad for her, I literally turned that guy's life around for her and her husband. And it was an amazing experience for me. And I couldn't let go of that experience. I just had to help people that way. And it just lit up a fire under me, where I needed to find out what the heck I did, because I didn't even know what I did at the time. I got some preliminary information, utilized it, and even to my surprise, it was incredible. And that's when I decided to go ahead and do some formal studying and figure this stuff out.
That's fantastic. And I think, so many of the practitioners, the chiropractors, when I was in chiropractic college, would share our stories. And it was interesting, the level of dedication and passion of each of us varied according to our story. I had horrifying migraines and all kinds of other, these sort of lower level but miserable health issues that nobody could address. And when they started to become addressed, I started feeling better. It's just so exciting to start to join in with the healthy people and feel really good for once.
Yeah, I think
that it drives you.
Everybody has to experience that, right? So you got to have your own personal experience to kind of open the door and realize the value that it brings, right?
Well, and there was all these, little hints that came about after years too. Like 10 years after high school, I ran into somebody, and they were going on about how old they feel, and and everything. And I said, I don't want to be arrogant here or anything, but I feel younger than I did in high school. And they're like, well, what'd you do? And I said, well, I discovered all the stuff that was bothering me, nutritionally, from exercise, even attitudinally, and I changed them. And I feel fantastic. And they're like, well, that's amazing. Yeah, you look good too. I'm like, thank you. And I wanted to share it with that person, just like you shared it with that individual. And, I was already a chiropractor at that point. And it's an exciting thing to feel healthier than you did in high school. And I feel that same way today, because, I had to get a few things right. I didn't have to do major overhauls, but it was just a couple of tweaks, and they were very personal tweaks, right?
Sure.
They were very personal things. And I know for you to figure you out and all the other hundreds of people you worked with, there's some general stuff that everybody does better with. And then there's these very specific things. And when you get those right, those deficiencies or those intolerances, an allergy is pretty easy to figure out. An intolerance is pretty sneaky. But let's get started with a basic question. So much of healthcare is about balance. And I talk to people about equilibrium and, sort of hitting that center spot. I read the work of Mark Sesson one time, and he went in about he was a triathlete who broke down, and he in his 60s, and he realized, is this okay for the human body to be doing this? And he started to realize it probably was a little too much. So we started to look at what was the amount of physical movement. So talk to me a little bit of just basically about balance. How do you find balance in life, and how do you consult somebody about just hitting the center a little bit more?
Sure. Well, you hit on a very important topic, and it's very important, and it's probably the key is staying in balance. So that goes for like whether you're talking about exercise, like you've mentioned, you can over-exercise, you can exhaust the adrenal glands, you can tax the body, and there's people who are sedentary, people who don't move, that need to move. So there's a balance, there's a spectrum, and it is with everything. It's with nutrition. You need to know the dosage, right? You could underdose and not do anything per person, and you can take too much of anything, and too much of anything becomes a toxin or a poison. So it has to be dosed properly, and all of life really is keeping it in balance. If you know that you're challenged, you may not know why, but because something is off balance. Where's the pendulum swinging, and with what and why? So the examples I give are like, we have good oils or good fats. So there's good fats and bad fats. We don't indiscriminately just get rid of fats. That's what cholesterol drugs are, right? So we're just stripping the oils and fats out of the body. Well, those same oils and fats support us. That's how hormones are made. That's how our brain and eyes are made of fat. You starve it of fat, you can have poor eyesight, poor memory, etc. So the signs of aging are really some of those things. Is you have to balance the fats, but more importantly, the good ones, not the bad ones.
Yeah.
So not just with fats, we got good and bad proteins, we got good and bad everything. It's really getting that balance.
Yeah, I think what you're talking about with fat was a big discovery for me early on, because I grew up in the, fat is bad. So everybody was eating, more carbohydrate loaded diets. Animal fats were bad. There's a lot of vegetarian talk in my youth. I knew a lot of people that were doing that. And then I read the work of, eat right for your blood type, and realized that the blood type had some interplay. I wanted to ask you that real quickly. Talk about balancing, but do you use the blood type diet? Do you ever get into that? Is that part of your work?
Well, the blood type diet, after a lot of investigation on the blood type diet, primarily it was valued because people did get benefits from following that diet, but there's specifics, like there's certain lignans that are good for some blood types, but not for others. But when it came down to it, it was just because people were improving their diet. They were eliminating sugar. They were just improving their overall diet and getting away from what we call the SAD, or standard American diet.
Right.
So it was the fact that they were eliminating a lot of what I call the insults and the things that would tax your health and compromise your health. And so, yes, people improved on the blood type diet, but the premise behind it and all the science behind it is a bit sketchy when you investigate it a little bit.
I get you. So all 4 diets were healthy. So people went on any of those and saw an enhancement in their health.
Was an improvement.
That's kind of what we broke it down to over time.
Right. It was an improvement. But if you really dig into it, a lot of the scientists and doctors don't feel it's the reason why it works is in question. It does work. It does have a benefit, though.
Yeah, that's what I kind of got into. I saw that because I did the blood type diet. There were things about it that made sense for my blood type, and things that didn't, as a reflection of my health.
Yeah,
and
I think it was Dr. Adamo that brought that to light.
Yes, it was. That's the book that I read. And then he also had the genotype diet. Did you ever read that one?
It was similar premises, yeah. That was based, I think, in the same thing with certain lignans and phytonutrients that were available. So there are like enzyme inhibitors with foods. That's kind of like the when you have thyroid issues, for example, you're supposed to stay away from shady vegetables, and that's the premise behind that. So there's a lot of truth behind it.
It's not the be all end
the
all.
whole,
Yeah. It's not everything, but it could act as a guide. And at very least, there's 4 healthy diets there, right?
Right.
So at least that's good.
Exactly.
Okay, but let's get into one of my favorite vitamins, and I harp on it every day with patients, is vitamin D. And I think I know a lot about it, but I'm sure I don't know everything. And I'd love to hear your kind of like synopsis of the value of vitamin D and getting it naturally versus getting it in a supplement, getting it from food. Break that down for us a little bit.
Sure. So vitamin D is probably one of the most important vitamins, and that's probably because it's misclassified as a vitamin. It's actually a hormone.
Yeah.
So vitamin D, preferably in the form of D3. So D3 is more bioavailable and you absorb it better. And essentially, everything in the natural health field is about being natural, right? And what we find in nature, going back to our ancestors, what we've done for generations, which the body's accustomed to. And so we introduce any foreign man-made products is really the issue. So now when we're dealing with vitamin D, we're really talking about the synthesis of vitamin D in our skin when we're in the sun. So the more sun exposure we get, and again, everything can be overdone, right? Balance. So you want to have some sun exposure for the amount of vitamin D that you can create in the body. And it's important because it helps with things like diabetes, arthritis, depression. Vitamin D has a whole host of mechanisms. Again, it's a hormone. So you're regulating a lot of things in the body. Hormones help to build your bones. Your immune system is very dependent on vitamin D. Again, it's like a hormone and helps to regulate a lot of processes in the body. So I'm a big proponent, as is many doctors. I think a lot of people are familiar with Dr. Mercola. He's a big proponent of vitamin D as well. We've seen a lot of benefits with utilizing vitamin D with clients. So I put that almost in the same category, like that's an important vitamin, like vitamin C, for example. Very, very important vitamin. So I'm big on both. I'm big on vitamin C and vitamin D.
Do you can you get people to do blood work? How do you get someone to get their blood work done for vitamin D? You as a practitioner, just so we understand your abilities, what your scope is, and all that.
Sure. So
I tell vitamin D taken.
Yep. So I tell all my clients, I do not replace their medical doctor. So we don't want to be associated as a medical doctor. We're natural health practitioners, or they'll consider us alternative, right? So we're alternative practitioners. So we actually send patients to their doctors so that their blood work is covered through their insurance. And we do have them check their vitamin D levels pretty regularly with the majority of our clients. And, some things are a tip off that they're low in vitamin D, but you would want to measure it anyway, because we happen to be in the Northeast, right? We're in the Northeast United States. So we don't get a lot of sunshine here. And in the winter months, we're indoors. So people are normally low on vitamin D levels. So we can easily see levels under 30. And we want those levels closer, at least 60, between 60 and 80 is what we're looking for in the blood work numbers. And if we get that, now you're absorbing more calcium. We could talk about alkalizing the body. So that's really important. Now you're oxygenating the body. So those are really big fundamental premises of what we want to accomplish with our clients, to kind of have them regain their health and stop having a dependency on medications. Because we got to remember that medications, as you know, medications are only there to address the symptoms. They're not addressing any underlying causes for their symptoms, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I think one of the big things I looked up one time, I took about a 2-hour seminar with 2 researchers on vitamin D, husband and wife, actually. It's kind of interesting. They're both PhDs in biochemistry, I believe. And it was fascinating. And by the time I got done, I was making a list of the symptoms of low vitamin D. And it was almost like everything. I mean, I thought, I don't know what's left. I guess I'll have to turn on a drug ad to find new symptoms, right?
Sure.
Those kind of symptoms weren't there, the lack of. And then of course I got into, the proper dosage of vitamin D, as far as, what are some of the side effects of too much vitamin D. And it was actually pretty hard to find too many side effects. Talk to me about that. If I was to take some hideous amount of vitamin D, what's the first thing you think I'm going to feel? I'll tell you what I read.
Yeah, vitamin D is a fat soluble vitamin. So it's
Mhm.
one of the few vitamins that are actually toxic, because you can take too much and it's not water soluble where you can excrete it if you have too much. It will actually tax the liver. So what are the symptoms of when your liver gets taxed? You can have anything from fatigue to rashes to digestive issues. It depends. Vitamin D, getting too high levels, someone will kind of feel poisoned.
Yeah.
So alkalose, what is it? When you can actually increase your calcium levels. There's a word for that. When you have too much high calcium.
Hypercalcemia.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and that can take place as well. But primarily it's because it's a fat soluble vitamin, and you can get chronic, vitamin D levels that are too high, and why it's important to check the blood for that.
Yeah, exactly. Because I get people that are excited and they have that, if a little bit's good, a lot's great.
Right. Balance. Right.
Yeah, that happened. It happened in chiropractic college with students. We had a guy that was juicing carrots, and pretty soon his palm of his hands were orange.
Yeah.
And the professor gave him a little bit of a talking to and said, all right, I'm glad you're excited about being in this field, but take it easy,
Yeah.
And like going back to what we started with, balance, right? We got to get it right, and the dosage on this stuff, is important. Do you see a difference in blood levels in people that are obese? Like, let's say you take an obese person and give them, 10,000 a day of vitamin D during, whatever the time when they're low.
Yeah.
I had read a little bit in the past, recently actually, that vitamin D in an obese individual is almost soaked up into the fat so much that the availability of it in the bloodstream was diminished. And that might be some of the reason why people are getting some of these more aggressive flus that are out there right now.
Right. Well, that is possible. The problem is that when you're dealing with obese individuals, they have a higher body weight. And so you do have to dosage them a little bit more, not less, actually.
Right.
And their issue primarily is you have to look at triglycerides and you have to look at their fats. So again, it's all diet. But the people who watch their diet and still can't lose weight, there's other issues going on. There's metabolic issues. You have to clean their liver out, for example. They might be constipated. It's like everything. It's an investigative troubleshooting for that individual to find out why they're retaining weight. Another big factor is hormones. Somebody can eat as much as they want and not gain a pound. And other people, they're obese, and it's because their body produces more hormones than another. So oftentimes I have to address the balance of their hormones, not just diet, and also their metabolic rate. And if you can improve that, those three things are big with obesity.
That makes sense. Absolutely. I counsel a lot of people on diet, and I find the same thing. Yeah. They get fed up with a friend who eats constantly and stays thin, and they seem to be, and there's that hormonal imbalance causing a complete difference in their metabolism.
Yeah, a lot of people see me and they've tried everything under the sun, every kind of diet, and they just haven't addressed certain things. I mean, thyroid's another one. If you're hypothyroid, you're going to gain weight. And no matter what you do and what you eat, it's not going to matter unless that's addressed. So there's multiple factors, and they just have to be addressed properly. I would highly recommend people do intermittent fasting as far as a good diet and exercising. We really should stay away from foods for about a 12-hour period at least, and not eat for that period of time. A lot of people snack late at night, have a big breakfast in the morning. Again, balance. So you got to give the body a chance to cleanse and a chance to restore and rebuild, right?
I tell patients that the beauty of fasting is you'll sort of burn off the biofilm on the intestine. And I liken it to an old water pipe in a house. You take an old pipe off, you look down there, and there's a buildup of 35 years or 150 years, if it's an old house, of gook, residual stuff that that came out of the water as those years of water going through. Sure. And you think about that's just water. Could you imagine what your intestine looks like when you spent your youth eating at McDonald's, and God knows what's stuck in there? And and we can get into bowel cleansing and everything else too. I don't even mean that. I just mean with a rest, the body can, start to look at digesting some of the biofilm off, and then you get a cleaner, more absorptive surface in the future when you go back to eating.
Absolutely.
And then the vitamins, the minerals, and the nutrients get in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a great example. You just think of water as your blood in the atherosclerosis process, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's minerals, just like it is in the water, calcifying on the pipes like it does on your arteries and veins.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a perfect example.
Yeah.
So that needs to be cleansed out. And a lot of people don't know that they can actually dissolve that off. They just don't know how, and their doctors are not going to inform them how. They wait for the heart attack and they do CPR. They wait for obstructed arteries, and then they do the surgery.
Well, like I've said, the names are messed up. They call that healthcare, and it's really disease care.
That's right.
And it's fantastic stuff, right? I mean, we need our disease care doctors and we need our healthcare doctors, but we got to switch the names around maybe. And because it's pretty heroic work to do disease care, but it's really in our world, we love the healthcare a little bit more, don't we?
Absolutely. So we're all about preventative, right? So they're all about crisis care. They wait till something happens to do anything about it, right?
Right. And then that's something I think it's becoming more and more accepted every day, from people getting involved in yoga to, really looking at more improved diets, better diets. But that sort of gets me to the next thing. And this is something that I have on my fridge at home. I have a list of alkaline and acidic foods on my refrigerator. And I've put a couple lists together because there was a little bit of contradiction on some of them. But in the end, give us an idea. Like, a lot of people don't have any idea that a food is alkaline and acidic. And especially if they'll say, well, a lemon is acidic, isn't it? And then the idea is, what is it doing in your blood, right? So talk about what's an acidic food, what's an alkaline food, and maybe some of the surprising ones.
Right. Well, what's interesting is there has been a whole trend on acidic and alkaline foods. And there is a large benefit to kind of alkalizing the body. Alkalizing the body means, if you think of batteries are alkaline, they hold a charge. If you lose your alkalinity and you start becoming acidic, you start losing your energy levels. And you hear people all the time as they get older, I don't have my energy. So we really need to re-alkalize the body, just like you'd have alkaline batteries and it holds a charge and holds energy. So the premise is correct. It's when we implement it. So the concept there is that if you take any food and you, let's say, burn it to its ash, is it alkaline, contains minerals, or it has less minerals and it's acidic? So that's the concept. The problem comes in that the body doesn't work that way. We process foods. So yes, in general, you have, let's say, two columns. You'll have acidic and alkaline. So on the acidic side, you'll have meats are acidic, dairy is acidic. So those kind of categories are considered acidic. So that's bad, right? It's not bad for you, but that would be considered acidic. And our body, when it goes through the digestive process, when we burn our food, we have a byproduct, just like when a gasoline engine burns gas, we have exhaust. Well, that exhaust is acidic, and we need to buffer it with alkaline substances. So again, that's the concept of what we're trying to do with acidic and alkaline. Now, the alkaline side is essentially fruits and vegetables. Primarily fruits and vegetables would be alkaline. Probably most alkaline would be like greens. So greens are highly alkaline as chlorophyll and is beneficial as far as oxygenating the body and essentially, keeping an alkaline state. Okay. So we have the acidic side, we have the alkaline side, but now with the way the body works is we're acidic with our stomach, with the hydrochloric acid. And then as we move our way further down, we become more alkaline. So the upper GI duodenum area starts becoming a little bit more alkalized. It mixes with the hydrochloric acid and the contents of the bile, from the liver. And then you get more and more alkaline until you get to the end, right? So you don't want to alkalize the stomach per se. You want an acidic stomach so that you have good digestion and good absorption. So you have to understand the body and how it works to stay alkaline, and why something like a lemon is controversial with acidic, alkaline, and whether it makes you more acidic or more alkaline. It's because the lemon acidifies your stomach, and then it gives you better absorption and can mineralize the body and create an alkaline environment. That's true of apple cider vinegar, and there's some items like that that are controversial.
Yeah.
But it's the use of that that helps you to strengthen digestion so that the other items that you put in that are alkaline are digestible and go to work for you.
Exactly.
And the other thing I wanted to mention is, just because a food is labeled acidic, like a meat or a dairy product, meats and dairy products are very healthy for you. And I know they get a lot of blame. So it's just doing it the right way, everything in balance. So the good thing about meats and dairy is that it's a building food. If you want to build the body, you want meat and dairy, proteins and fats, proteins and fats that'll build the body. If you go on a strict vegan or vegetarian diet, well, you can lose weight that way. You start cleansing that way. But again, it's all balance. You don't want to just do all cleansing all the time, and you don't want to do all building all the time. So just to put in perspective, it's like, if all you do is meats and dairies, maybe you get thick blood and you clot, and if you don't do it right. And then if you go the other direction, alkaline diet, you strip your fats out, which is nervous system problems. You have digestive issues and elimination issues. You can have leaky gut that we could talk about. So those are all things that would happen with too alkaline of a diet, and the other way would be too acidic of a diet. So again, it's balance. So generally you want to lean towards alkaline, but it's keeping a balanced diet. That's what I recommend.
Yeah, well, I always tell people to lean towards alkaline because so many of the foods that aren't good for you are acidic.
Sure.
And that acidic state is the worst of the two. To err on the side of being more alkaline would be beneficial. And I say the same thing about dairy products, especially. I'm not a fan of dairy products. You sound like you're a bigger fan than I am, but I do 100% agree with you that it's like an anabolic steroid almost, because if someone is in the need to grow and put weight back on and get bigger, whether it's someone lifting weights or someone who just came off the chemotherapy, you're going to want to build that body back up. And I think dairy products are fantastic. I joke with any of my patients on a diet. I said, you don't want to do what you don't want the true effect of milk, because milk's effect is to turn a calf into a cow.
Sure.
And if you try to lose weight, you don't want to be a cow, right?
Right.
So the idea there is, take out the foods that are going to build you up. And I know you know that, but I'm just I err on the side of staying away from dairy products. And I got into the type A blood diet because that's my type, and it did say stay away from dairy, and I did, and it made a difference. So that was one of the things about the diet that did work.
Yes.
And it was great to see. But I fully believe and agree with you. Like with children, especially, you want a strong growing body, and whether that calcium gets to bone or not, that's another controversial topic we can talk about. Calcium from milk.
Yes. There's been a lot of science behind milk now. We know a lot more why milk is not good for certain people and certain body types. So there's a certain protein that's in some milk and not in other milks. And it depends on the cow that they use. So the Holstein cows are the cows that create a lot more milk, and there's less cost to producing it. But those are the types of milk that now we know there's a certain protein in there that can cause diabetes with certain individuals. So there's a lot of science behind why milk has been a problem. It's problematic in the diet for certain individuals. But in general, if you get a good quality milk, you pretty much it's one of the most nutrient dense foods with the proteins and fats that you need. Right. So it's just doing it right again. It's just getting quality. Yeah, not quantity. Yeah.
I'll have to talk to you about that in the future, because that's an interesting thing. Because winning me back onto milk might be a challenge, but I love it. I love learning.
So here's a quick tip that I give my clients is kefir is a dairy product, but kefir is a cultured product. It's a fermented product. So when you culture that milk, you're breaking down lactose, for example, which is problematic for people. So people who are lactose intolerant, there is no lactose in kefir. You can drink kefir without that reaction or that problem, that intolerance.
Right.
So kefir is phenomenal at longevity and probiotics, and the list goes on and on. And there's a whole study of how the gut mirrors our brain and
Mhm.
supports our immune system. Probiotics are phenomenal, and kefir is probably one of the best. I consider it the king of fermented foods.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Kefir has done some amazing things for patients of mine with different, from autoimmune conditions to just plain allergies, the more mild autoimmune conditions.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree. And I'm, anyone listening to this podcast knows how much I love fermented foods, from kombucha all the way down. So
Awesome.
that's great you brought that up. I think you're right on. One other thing I wanted to get into was EMF. A lot of people don't know what that is. It sounds like a band from the 90s. I think there's something like that in the 90s. But there is a lot of talk about it since 5G's been out there now. Give us a quick synopsis of what is it, what are we going to do about it, and how bad is it, and all that.
Okay. So EMF is a very big issue. It's one of the big environmental factors that affect people's health. I underestimated this when I first came across it myself, and many practitioners do. And then I was affected personally, like always happens until you value something. So I purchased my first home, and I didn't realize that my health was being affected by my home. And a lot of people now, I ask them as part of my when they fill out my forms and my questionnaires as far as evaluating them, did your problem start when you moved into a new home or a new workplace? And oftentimes that's the case. So what we have is we have homes and buildings have, of course, electrical wires surrounding us in the walls. And so what we're talking about with EMFs is electric. The E stands for electric, M magnetic, and F for frequencies or fields. So it's electromagnetic fields. So that energy in our environment affects our cells and how they function. So essentially, if you're in the presence of a magnetic field, we now know that whether it's in the vicinity of a cell phone tower or the vicinity of a magnetic field in a home or building, there's numerous cancers that take place because of that. And I'll give you a perfect, simple example. A lot of people don't realize that if you place a child's bed with their headboard against the wall, and that wall's exterior has the incoming electric line, the electric meter against that wall, many times that child gets leukemia.
Oh my
So
God.
it's simple, yeah, it's simple things like that that could be prevented, but the general public is unaware of it. And the reason why it's not, people aren't informed is because of all the issues that they would have to do with costs, and especially with cell phone towers, they gotta rewire everything properly and do things right. So
Right.
I look at that kind of like the fluoride issue. We're fluoridated in our water supply. There's been a big push on getting the fluoride removed, and a lot of municipalities have done that. But the majority of people don't know that that's our carcinogen and causes thyroid issues and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. So if a person wants to figure out where they should place their child's bed, where they should sleep at night, maybe even move out of their house if it's that bad, do you supply any kind of service for that to come in and check? Because I know aren't there meters that you can run around in a room with, and
Yeah,
you can hear?
so I purchased several meters and realized that this was so important because I would actually apply a nutritional program that should work with someone, and they were still challenged with their condition. And I chalked it up to, this person can't be doing what I'm telling them to do. It's a compliance issue, right?
Right.
And it wasn't. Those poor individuals actually had an environmental factor affecting their health, and it was this EMF. So once I did a few of those, and I went to their home with meters, and I do inspections now, and I meter it and find out, measure it. You can't see it; it's invisible. It's like talking about radon, right? You don't know it's present. So you go and you check and do the measurements. Is it a level that's interfering with the body? That's a health problem, or is it okay? And there's 4 levels that we check, 4 different EMFs that we check. And you check each one, find out if any of them are at levels that affect the health, and then you would mitigate it. So there's ways to shield it. There's rare cases where it's so chronic or that it can't be shielded that we actually have to make the recommendation to move. We hate to do that, but on occasion, yeah, we have to do that on occasion. So yes, I do EMF inspections, and they're very important. And I wouldn't have taken that up as a natural health practitioner, but I realized what a big factor it really is, and an environmental factor, that if that's present, you can't get past, you can't just set up a nutritional program and expect someone to overcome, let's say, magnetic fields in their environment. It's not going to
Right.
happen.
Now, the founder of chiropractic in the 1800s was studying magnetic healing because it was a big wave back then. The history of magnetic healing is pretty wild. And they used to swing these big magnets over bodies, and they had, you know, the Chinese go way back with magnetic ball bearings that would tape on an acupuncture point to continue a stimulus to that point while you're walking around. And I know some practitioners of acupuncture still do that. So the idea that that magnetism or magnetic fields affect the body is ancient and very real. And it's a subtle energy that you can't feel, but you can feel the effects, but you can't feel the actual magnetic field touching you. Like the hair on your, you know, your arm isn't going to stand up when you're walking past a magnetic field like you think it might, because that's actually an electrical field that can do that. That's great.
Yeah, and what's also true is going back to balance, right? So you can have magnetic fields that are healthy for you, and some of the ones that you talked about. So those would be direct currents, not alternating currents. You can have a direct current magnetic field. In fact, the Earth emits one that's very healthy for us. It's called the Schumann resonance. And those magnetic fields help our heart to beat, our brain to fire. Where do you think those cycles come from? We're not plugged into a wall. Where are we getting our energy? It's from the Earth. It's from that magnetic field. So there are magnetic fields that are beneficial, and those that I just spoke of that are detrimental. So it's knowing that difference and applying. You can harness energy around you that supports your health, and then there's ones that will drain you of your energy and your health. Yeah,
I think that's a great service that you offer, to be able to go into someone's home and with the right meters and you know, look for these things.
Yeah. And when they hear the meter and they realize what's in their environment, because again, it's invisible until you bring the meter. Once you bring the meter, you hear this stuff. It's worse than hearing static on a television set. It's just, if you could hear it, it's like being at a party too long and you want to get the heck out of there. You had enough. It's too loud. You want to leave. Your body is being taxed that way. It's just, you don't know. You know?
And to be clear, you're not a Ghostbuster. You're not going in there looking for poltergeists. You're looking at real magnetic fields.
You know what's funny about that? I actually played Ghostbuster on my way to an inspection, and it just psychs me up to get in there and meter them and make sure that everything's the right way. So that's kind of funny that you mentioned that.
It just kind of comes to mind, I think, and you're running around looking at meters. I've seen some shows that they try to find these, you know, these energies in a sense. But obviously, what we're looking at is a man-made electrical, you know, field or magnetic field.
Yeah, so the Environmental Protection Agency has acknowledged that, you know, these are harmful to health. There's a lot of agencies that came out. And so there are trains, for example, that they're measured for these EMFs prior to designing the train and trying to reduce those EMFs. So I
didn't follow you. You said train? They're training people?
Trains, the trains you would board to travel.
Oh, traveling train. I gotcha.
Yeah. So those trains are on tracks, and a lot of those are electric engines. So there's a lot of those electric and magnetic fields on a train. They try to reduce them in the passenger compartment, but they're really not low enough now that we have a greater understanding. So traveling on a train is probably not the best thing as far as health. It's not like you're sleeping in the environment, but you do get some exposure for a short duration, you know?
Yeah, that's, I didn't know that. I didn't know what was moving trains these days. I haven't been on a train in years.
Yeah.
That's interesting too. You mentioned kefir. What's your next favorite fermented beverage or fermented food? Do you have another one you think carries a good base probiotic?
There's a lot of them. Sauerkraut's supposed to be an excellent food. There really is so many. It depends on people's culture. Every culture has their fermented foods. So there's even ways fish is prepared in Europe that they kind of prepare it in a way that's, you know, sometimes if you add a little sea salt, apple cider vinegar to some foods and kind of marinate it that way. That actually helps.
Okay. Yeah, because I recommend that people rotate their fermented food so they're getting a nice variance of probiotics, different organisms, and this way, because diversity has a lot to do with your gut health. It isn't just that you want 7 billion of one thing; you want 7 billion of maybe 400 different things, different organisms that are going to help you, with your immune system and breaking down your food, and that second brain that you alluded to a little bit ago.
And that's why I actually like kefir, because kefir actually has all the probiotics present. Instead of selecting various different fermented foods, kefir actually has all of them, virtually all of them. So that's why I like it. I don't have to reach for other probiotic bottles. I mean, it's a less expensive way. You can buy a probiotic bottle between $20 to $40. You can buy a bottle of kefir for about $4 today.
Right.
So it's an inexpensive way to get the billions of live organisms. So you don't have to worry about when you get the bottle, how much is actually alive, right?
Right.
So what's available from that, right?
It's literally going on as you're holding that bottle. It's great.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah.
One other topic talk about as well as liver flush. The liver flush idea is something that I've toyed with, but I don't recommend too much. I don't have a lot of expertise in there. Most stuff we're talking about today, I'm in the ballpark with you on, but the liver flush is a little bit more of a mystery to me. Do you have a known liver flush that you recommend? Does it vary greatly with different people, different health conditions?
Yes. The liver flush varies. There's different protocols for liver flushes. Now, I use one that's closer to Dr. Hulda Clark's protocol, but they're all primarily similar, where you're taking essential fatty acids, fats, oils, and flushing it through the liver, drinking it, and having the liver process it. So the viscosity of those oils, the thickness of the oils will push out stones. So that's cholesterol and just essentially fried foods, and all the bad trans fats or hydrogenated fats are all stuck in the liver. So you got to think of our liver as a sponge, and there's little cones or holes. They get plugged up. So then we lose the efficiency of our liver over time as those little holes get plugged up. So we need to flush those out. You need to create some pressure on the pores of your liver and flush those stones out of those areas. So you can't do that all at once with the entire liver, but after doing a series of liver flushes, you're flushing the front of it out, and then the stones in the back roll to the front, and you're flushing the rest of it out. And I can tell you, that's one of the most beneficial therapies I've learned in my practice, and have gotten a lot of people out of a lot of things. It's kind of like the EMF, where you hit a wall, you can't make progress with someone. Then you realize that their liver's clogged, you flush their liver out, and you see tremendous results from something like that. People have had back problems their whole life, sometimes goes away. Some people who've had lupus, or people have had gallbladder issues, of course, because when you flush the liver, you're flushing the gallbladder at the same time. You don't have to have surgery to remove it. You just got to clean out your gallbladder, that organ.
Right.
So it helps in numerous ways. The appendix is related when you flush it out, and you can clean the appendix out partially, but we have other methods to do that as well. So the liver flush, I can say with certainty that it can anti-age an individual and turn back the hands of time. I can actually say that. I've seen that happen, and people mention it to me all the time after going through a liver flush. Because you got to remember, the liver holds 2 quarts. 2 quarts of blood go through the liver every minute, and the liver is cleaning your blood.
Sure.
And your liver orchestrates all the biochemical functions in your body. Liver is extremely important. It's like central. And so your digestion is your liver. The bile flows into your gut. Your elimination is that. If your liver is clogged, you get sluggish bowels and you can't go to the bathroom. You get constipated. Some people have loose stools because their gallbladder may be clogged, and then everything dumps into the intestines. It gets irritated, and then you have loose stools. So there's a lot of things it addresses. So the book I recommend for that, to learn more about it, is a guy by the name, last name is Moritz, Moritz, I believe it is.
Okay.
And he has like a liver flush book. And everything in there is fantastic. And is some of the testimonials that I hear every day from my clients, because the majority of my clients will do liver flushes. And they can tell you that some people say, well, how do I've done liver cleansing before. I've cleaned my liver. Maybe my liver's okay. Not until you go through a liver flush. And you'll be so surprised that once you take a series of drinks at night, that's what you're doing with the liver flush, you'll visibly see the results in the toilet. So your stones come out and you'll actually see the evidence of the clogged
That's
liver.
wild. That's wild. So this book you mentioned can give somebody some good guidance on how to do it. And obviously they can come and see you as well and consult with you to do it as well. Sure. Well, that's great. That's to say that it's anti-aging is, wow, that's like serious clickbait, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
well, so now, right. So now I personally had an example where I had one point in my life early on when I first learned about this, I had a rash all over my body and I couldn't sleep. I was so itchy and aggravated. Nothing helped. I mean, I don't just discount doctors altogether. I go to doctors. That's my first line, and it shouldn't be. Now I learn it's not my first line. My first line is natural. But back then, you give them a chance. Oh, wouldn't it be nice if we can all just visit our doctor? They give us the answers, and we're off and running. Unfortunately, that's not the case, and why we have jobs, because it doesn't happen, and we get the worst patients. We get the ones that don't improve. They've seen every doctor. Now they got to go out of pocket and do it the right way because everything that's covered doesn't work for them. So we take them on. And so my personal experience was I was so agitated and itchy and had this reaction. It was urticaria, and I didn't know what to do about it. And I got an allergy to every food, eggs, dairy, even meat. I couldn't eat anything. I didn't know what to eat. And I started crying. I was beyond myself in agony of what to do. I was lost and no doctor had answers for me. This liver flush became my answer. Once I flushed my liver out, I had no allergies, which it can do for people. You won't have any allergens anymore. You have a lot more tolerance. You're not sensitive anymore. People with chemical sensitivities, more than likely, that's what it is. So the liver flush, once I was done with the liver flush, I was always a cold individual. It was like somebody turned the furnace on in my body. I was warm, had warm hands again. So a lot of people that have that issue with their cold hands. And my skin was incredible after flushing my liver out. It only took a few months and I had really soft baby skin, and it was incredible because at the time, that wasn't the case. So
that's fantastic. And the skin is such an important organ and such a good indicator of our health. Whether it's, the color, you can see people that smoke or people that eat poor diet, they don't have that pigmentation in their skin. And people might look at that person and say they just don't seem healthy, and they're not even sure what they're looking at, but they're looking at that, the sort of the undertones of the skin.
Yeah, and you're right on. You're right on with that, because once the liver's taxed or it's clogged or congested, what takes over? Remember, your liver cleans out your blood, so now it can't clean out your blood, and your blood is passing through your kidneys. Now you're taxing your kidneys. It can't do the job of your liver. It's overburdened. So now that gets taken over by your skin, the largest organ of the body. So now your kidneys are taxed. Your skin is changing. So a lot of people with psoriasis or cystic this or acne, it's because the blood is coming in contact with the skin. It's poison essentially, and it's carrying a lot of infection as well. It's both poison and infected. So it's a big part of things.
So another question, another topic. We talked about EMFs, and I may have told you I'm putting together an online university, and it's going to be 28 days to optimum health, where you can pick a day. You go each day, you listen to a small segment, and then you get the PDFs with it. And one of the days I did was on grounding and earthing, the similar idea, right? And I was like, when I read the book, I said, I know a little bit about this before I put this video together. I'm going to go to the next level. And I bought a book on it, and the bed sheet and the wrist guard, so I can plug it into my outlet. And it was really cool. I mean, it really gives you a sense of calm. That's what I noticed when I have it on.
Yes.
And but yeah, give me your 101 class on grounding or earthing and why it's important, and then I'll I'll fill in whatever I know.
Sure. I love earthing. Grounding and earthing is phenomenal. So it comes down to, again, our ancestors going back to the way we used to live. So if you're in contact with the ground, now one of our worst inventions is sneakers.
Mhm.
You know, you're in the car, you're not grounded, there's rubber tires. You walk in the home, you're not grounded. But if you're outside, especially when there's dew on the grass and you're on your bare feet, or you're on the beach, that is grounding. And we all feel great when we're walking on the beach, especially when it's wet and we have the water, right? So we're grounding. So if you think about a beach, you're away from the wires in your home. You could think of all the wires in your home as a big antenna, and it's energizing you in a negative way. It's stimulating you. It's making you anxious. You walk away from that. People go for walks. They feel better. They don't know why, but they're, oh, I'm in fresh air. I'm outside. I feel better. It's because you're removing yourself from a stimulant. And a lot of things are like that, whether it's coffee and other stimulants in our diet. Bodybuilders do it with stimulants in their drinks. So you don't want to overstimulate the body because you'll exhaust the body. So with grounding, it's the opposite. Earthing and grounding, you're connecting yourself to the earth, and you're literally discharging. Now, you can think of it like static electricity, and it does discharge you with static electricity. But more importantly, it's taking off all the bad energies from your body. And the biggest benefit is you're absorbing the negative ions from the earth.
Mhm.
So we can actually measure that with EKGs, with your circadian rhythms. We can do that in numerous ways. We measure hormones and everything. And there's an immediate change within 20 minutes of grounding, a benefit,
They were
absolute
talking
benefit.
about
And
cortisol levels and blood sugar as well, and researched in the book I read.
And that's true of EMFs as well. When you reduce someone's EMFs, they can regulate their sugar better. They can regulate their blood pressure better. It's all related. So this is the opposite of EMF. So you're trying to get the good energy in your body versus being exposed to the bad energy. So when you ground, you're absorbing the negative ions from the earth, and you're literally connecting yourself to an unlimited supply of antioxidants and negative ions that will charge your platelets, your red blood cells, so that they don't attract and come together and form these spirals and thicken your blood. So, and the opposite happens. They repel, and you have nice, thin, well oxygenated blood. You improve your circulation. If you improve your circulation, you improve everything. It's all about blood flow. Congestion is the opposite, right? You want good oxygenated alkaline blood. And this is a therapy that is so easy because talk about compliance. I mean, you don't have to remember to take a pill. You go to bed every night. If you have a mat there, you're getting 8 to 10 hours of therapy every night without thinking about it. I think it's phenomenal therapy, and it's so beneficial. Another example, they even have people are on arthritic drugs, painkillers, anti-inflammatories. A lot of them remove their drugs, or at least reduce the majority, the dosage of their drugs, because they'll take a lead, a grounding rod, put a wire to it, put a patch on their shoulder. Let's say they have a frozen shoulder, and that does better than their anti-inflammatory drug.
Yeah.
And it's only for 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So a lot of times I'll tell my elderly clients, listen, I think it's great if you go to the YMCA, go use their pool, get in a pool, ground, any hot tub, any beach, anything where you're grounded, and you'll feel better. So they'll chalk that off as, well, you don't have any weight resistance and you're moving in the water. I think the biggest benefit is really that you're grounded.
Have you seen the sandals that they have, the grounding sandals?
Yes, they sell sandals and sneakers that have a little insert where you're grounded when you're walking.
Yeah, it's actually a metal plate that touches the ground and then goes to your foot. So you're connected instead of being rubber separated by the insulator of a rubber sneaker. There's a pad.
Right. I think it's a great idea. It's just that the surface area, you're getting a small amount with contact with your body. Your full feet would be better, and the mat would get your whole body, or at least the mat that covers your legs, a smaller mat that your legs are going to be laying on that, and you're grounded. So I have meters that can test whether your mat is grounding you. and if you're getting a benefit from your mat. So they really should be tested when you put them in. I mean, for the most part, they work though. And I highly recommend
the kit I got had a one wrist plate with a grounding plug, and then the sheet with a grounding plug. It's like a mat or a sheet. And then it came with a little outlet tester. So you can plug it into the outlet and make sure that your ground in your outlet, because sometimes they're not hooked up right, is actually ground. So then you can feel like, hey, you know, I can use this outlet. It has a proper ground to it. Because in some older houses, most people putting things together. There weren't inspectors back then, or it's the fifth outlet in that hole, and someone didn't put the wire on. You know, who knows?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that is important, that they need a plug it in, the lights come up, you know that it's grounded properly. Another thing is there's some controversy on the grounding mats, only because some people have stray currents that are coming through their copper plumbing on their home, and that creates magnetic fields. And that's part of your ground, because by code, your grounding wire is supposed to be connected to your water meter, at least here in the Northeast.
Yeah.
So that's problematic when you use a mat or an earthing pad, because you're plugging into that electricity or that magnetic field, and you don't want to be exposed to that. So when you plug it into that ground hole, you have 3 holes, right? The one at the bottom is a ground hole. You're supposed to plug it into that hole and you're grounded. Well, if that ground is carrying electricity, it's a problem. So oftentimes I'll say, if you want to use a grounding mat, an earthing mat, have me come over. I'll check and make sure that you don't have magnetic fields on that ground or any electric currents running on that ground.
Good to know.
Because that plug won't do it. It'll just tell you if there's a ground, but it won't tell you if there's some transients or some electricity on that.
Okay. And is it a similar meter you use with the when you're doing the EMF evaluation?
The meters, I have 4 or 5 different meters that I test different things with. So that meter would be one of the meters. Yes.
Gotcha.
So that you know what, that's called a, that is a, what's it called now? I'm trying to think of it. It's got a little loop on it. You just put it around your pipe. And it's not an ohm meter. It's something like that.
Okay.
But there is a measuring device that you clamp on your pipe, and it gives you a reading. And if there's any current running through the pipe, then it could be problematic. So it's just that plug-in tells you there's a ground, but then you got to do the additional work. So to avoid all that, if people don't want to hire someone to go come check their ground, you can connect your ground wire from the mat to an outside ground rod.
Right. I've seen that too.
I had an electrician, for example, come to my house, and I said, install an outlet, no power to that outlet, just connect the ground separate from my electrical ground, and then I'll use the mat. That's probably the safest way to use a mat and to make sure you get benefit from a mat.
Interesting. That's good to know. Those are good hints.
Yeah.
Well, Mike, one last thing. I want just, you know, I try to leave my audience with a bit of like a couple of simple things they can do, because obviously when you and I get talking, a lot of my guests, it's almost, you know, it's a lot to digest, because there's a lot out there, and we've been doing this a long time, so we know a lot. If someone was to say, wow, that was a great podcast, but what are the 3 things I can do right now? You know, pretty simple and fast to get on board with just being healthier, younger looking, as you're saying, with the liver flush. What are 3 things they can do maybe today or in the next week or really soon that can get them springboarded into another level of health?
Sure. So from the things we talked about, and just the last item we talked about, if all you do is simply go outside and ground and be in bare feet, there's a lot of people who are never in bare feet. They always need to have shoes on, and they feel like they're protected, or whatever the case may be, or maybe their feet are cold. If you can ground, of course, that would be a good thing.
How long should they stand outside in the grass?
At least 15 or 20 minutes. Now, of course, that's a challenge in the wintertime, but you can find a place, and you can find a place to ground. And so I would say, from what we talked about, trying to find a place where you can put your bare feet down. So if you're reading a book or you're doing something, just take your shoes off, right? And just ground yourself during that time. Another thing they could do is, I'm very big on probiotics, like I talked about with kefir. You know, you could do a half a glass of kefir in the morning, first thing in the morning, again at bedtime. I think that would enhance everything else you do, all the other supplements you take, the absorption of your medicines. It would just, you know, keep you in balance. I think that's one of the big missing elements in health, is to make sure that your gut microbiome, like you mentioned, is in a good state. Everything else will improve from there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and a third item, I guess, would be, I would just say, do your due diligence, because if you have blind faith and you just, especially today and what we have going on, if you just have blind faith and just put your faith in the authorities as far as the medical profession, you know, they can fail you and then you're in a worse position. You just got to balance that. Again, everything's balanced. So take an integrative approach. Don't just rely on the doctor, and just don't rely on a natural health practitioner like myself. Look at both sides and do the research. You don't want to just blindly follow anyone, including myself. You want to just, do your own, take responsibility for your own health. I tell all my clients that. Just take responsibility for your own health.
There was a commercial years ago, and I don't know if it's still on. They used to say, an educated consumer is our best customer. And I always liked that, because I thought that's a pretty bold thing, because so many advertisements are just full of baloney. And this guy's actually had the guts to say, I want you educated. So when you come in here, you're the best customer, because you know what you're buying when you come in here, because I got the best and you're going to know it. I don't have to convince you and everything else. So when someone comes to me, I love when someone's already been involved in natural healthcare, because they're an educated consumer. If they're not an educated consumer, I love the respect of saying, hey, I'm going to talk to this guy. He knows what he's doing, and I'm going to start doing some of the stuff. And then I before you know it, I'm going to get them to become an educated consumer. I'm going to say, hey, read this book, do this, read this, and get them to understand, because guys like you and I, we have nothing to hide, because we're working, in my opinion, at a higher truth. We're looking for the truth of health, and the truth of health is found in nature. But when you're diseased, you've got to keep you alive. There isn't about truth, and we're trying to just keep your heart beating, right? I mean, that's disease care. And I've been saying this my whole life. You do have to blend the two. I don't want somebody in my office having a stroke. That isn't my expertise.
And nobody is the end all. And if anybody tells you that, then they're deceiving you. You want to complement with different therapies, different people. But, the thing is, we don't have one foot in the door with big pharma, right? It's not like we're going to be making a lot of money selling a particular product. They're vitamins. You can get them anywhere. We really care about you, the patient, right? So it's about keeping you healthy, and you're able to share that with your family members. So it elevates all of us. And the sad part is that a lot of times our profession is discredited because of, a lot of things that people will say because they do it the wrong way. So if you're going to see someone and you want to do vitamins, go to a professional that knows about vitamins. Because when you start playing with it, you're like, oh, I've done that, it doesn't work. Well, it's because you didn't do it properly. So it's just keeping yourself, do your research, do your due diligence, and then take responsibility for your own health and complement. Our services are one where we can prevent you having to do more invasive things, right? So maybe prevent surgeries, maybe prevent having that heart attack or stroke. That's really where it's at. We don't want to wait till that happens. And unfortunately, that's what people do, is they say, well, I don't have an issue yet. When I have an issue, I'll go see the doctor. By then it's really too late, and it's going to take a long time to bring you back where you need to be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, Mike, that's great. Those are great points. Hey, if somebody wants to reach you, what's the simplest way?
My website is NY is New York, NY naturalhealthcenter.com. Okay. And you can reach me there at michael@nynaturalhealthcenter.com. And we can always, give you our practice information, our telephone number, and we kind of go from there.
Sure. Great. Hey, Mike, great for having you on the show. I appreciate it.
Thanks,
and everybody listening, you like these videos, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our station, and leave comments. We'll make sure we get that book on that you mentioned about the liver flush, so people can read up and help themselves with that. But thanks again, Mike, for coming on. This was great. I really appreciate it. I learned a lot, and I know my audience has. So
always great speaking with you, Dr. Christopher. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Have a great day.
All right. Thank you.